Welcome, welcome. First live, first stream. Just a quick test. Top chat, put live chat. Welcome to live chat. Okay. Hmm. Oh, okay. I see it. Testing, testing, 1 2 1 2. Testing, testing, 1 2 1 2. Oh, okay. I see it. I think it's good. Testing, testing, 1 2 1 2. Testing, testing, 2. Very nice. Okay. I think it's good. Where should I put this? I don't know where to put the phone. Put it right here. Gotta make it stand, fuck. Whatever. Okay. So I guess I'm just gonna start answering some questions. Probably make these into shorts. The first and foremost, what is consciousness? People say it's emergent, people say it's a byproduct. I think it's both. I think it's neither. Um, Scientists say that consciousness is just a byproduct. It's what happens when good communication and complex strategies become thoughts, and these thoughts and emotions become shared narratives, which allows us to just become so big brained. It's crazy. I don't necessarily believe that we know what consciousness is, nor will we ever do. It's just one of those things where you can't really put your finger on it. You can't really say this is the beginning of consciousness and that's the end. There's no point A, there's no point B. There's just that. And I think it's very important to not get mixed up with thinking too physically about it, you know? Um, if we are aware of the body, if we're aware of the brain, I don't know if it would be proof, but it would be, I guess, foolish to just say that consciousness can only operate in the brain. Then again, it's like, to you, what do you think consciousness is, right? Is it just thinking? Is it thinking about thinking? Is it the act of being aware? Is it the state of being? Being aware of that being? You know? Um, in my humble opinion, I think consciousness is just the universe's way of being aware of itself, right? There's no rhyme or reason to it. I think given the right circumstances, right? Given the right instruments and the right chemicals, um, consciousness was always meant to be. If it didn't spawn on this planet, it would have spawned on the next, or the next, or the next, or the next. But I think, regardless as to who held it, to be self aware realistically is just inevitable, really. I think, yeah. So, second question, why is there something rather than nothing? It's a very good question. Um, we need to exclude human meaning from this. We need to exclude the values that we place on this thing and really just see it for what it is, right? We exist. We're aware of that existence. We don't know why we exist, but we do. I think it's very important to just understand that we don't have all the answers. And I don't think we ever will, you know? I think it's less about trying to dig deep in that rabbit hole, which I've gone through, and there's no end to it, you know? There's only the acceptance that there is a lack, not a lack, a limitation of knowledge that the human brain could capt from this reality. Um, so yeah, that's really an unanswerable question. Yeah. Is reality objective or subjective? So, objectively, there is something here. There is something, you can't refute it. If you try to, it's just a delusion. Um, to even contemplate about nothingness, there needs to be somethingness in the first place. You can't just be like, oh yeah, nothing is real and there's nothing. How can you even how can you even have the awareness of nothing if there is truly nothing? You wouldn't be aware of it in the first place. You wouldn't have the conception. You wouldn't be listening to my words. You wouldn't be breathing, right? So we objectively exist. Now the perception of this existence is entirely subjective, right? I like to use the analogy of a glass ball. So many angles, so many different perspectives, all warped by our position in this reality. Um, there's not really a rhyme or reason why it's so subjective. On the spiritual side of things, it says that the universe wanted to fractalize itself into an infinite amount of beings to experience itself. I don't think there's a meaning or value behind it. I don't think there's a reason why. It just is, realistically. That's the mentality that I've always sort of adopted at this point. It just is. Um, and I think it's just the acceptance in what is. So could reality be an illusion? This is a very tricky one because a lot of people could get into psychosis because of the thought process behind that. Maybe reality just is a simulation. Maybe reality isn't real, right? Like if I slap you in the face, you're going to feel pain, right? That pain is only there because of the stimuli that your brain, your nervous system has allowed you to feel, right? All of our senses, the reason why we are the way we are is because of the stimuli correlating to our environment. Without that stimuli, there's nothing to base ourselves off of. There's nothing to construed or believe or imagine, right? It all just really depends on that correlation. And so without the third party of stimuli, us, the subject, and reality, the object, can't interfere with each other, right? It doesn't have the necessary tools to. But because of stimuli, um, we could. I wouldn't go as far to say that that is an illusion. I would just think it's a poor representation of the whole scope. That we would only ever understand a true slither of it and never the totality. So, what makes something real? Well, first and foremost, if you're asking about the self, what makes us real, I think would just be the fact that we are aware of the fact we are real, right? I don't think something fake could be self-aware about its own fakeness. Only something real would be able to be aware of that. Um, and then let's say like in the virtual world, right? The pixels on my screen right now, they're real in a sense, but they're just, once again, a stimuli. There's a third party allowing me to perceive this screen, allowing me to perceive my phone, right? Is it real per se? Well, if I'm perceiving it, if the light cones in my eyes are formulating a certain context in which I can read numbers and letters and see my own face on the screen, then yeah, I think it's real. I wouldn't say it's physically real, there's no corporeal sense to it, but it's real, you know? Uh, Same with VR. It's understanding the degrees of what is real. Nothing is fake to an extent, right? Actors who act, right? Their roles are a representation of something that is real, but it doesn't mean that the acting itself is fake, right? They still act and they still do it corporeally, tangibly. And so, no matter if it's a real role or a fake role, real dialogue or fake dialogue still exists. So, for me, it still has hold in quote unquote reality. So, are we discovering reality or are we constructing it? It's a very good question. I think reality without conscious observation would still be reality. We just wouldn't have the tools to be aware of it, right? It's like the thought experiment of if a tree in a forest falls and there's nobody to hear it, does it still make sound? The vibrations of that force, that tree collapsing onto the ground, it exists. But there's no person to capture that stimuli, translate it into sound, and say, oh yeah, this made a sound, right? But if you deprive that stimuli, it doesn't mean that those vibrations don't exist. There's just nobody to be aware of them, right? So it's, I think it's less about discovering or constructing, more so just our vessels being able to capture that slither and reinforce and refine upon that slither. I think it's really important that we don't get confused and become so anthropocentric, human centric, to the point where we think that we are the centerpiece of this world. We are the centerpiece of this existence. We are the only reason why it exists, and without our awareness, it wouldn't exist. I think that's just very egotistical. It just doesn't make sense, you know? You deprive all humans of existence. The flora and fauna still grow. They still continue, right? We are the centerpiece of this existence, and we shouldn't act as though we are so. So, does free will exist? This is a tricky one, man. You know, if I slap myself in the face right now, is it because of that question, or is it because I chose to slap myself in the face? I'm a very big, I wouldn't say believer, but an acceptor. It's not even a word. I accept causality for how it is. I accept determinism for how it is. I believe quite a bit in um the block universe theory, where all things are pretty much happening at the same time, except the present moment is just a slither of that block, um, a linear slither of that block. If something acausal were to exist, it would remove my ability to believe in determinism. Then there's also studies that say like sometimes the brain could interact with future instances that simply just hasn't happened yet, right? Like me talking about this conversation right now, was it my choice to, or did everything in my life ever accumulate to this very moment in which I am talking about this right now? I'm not sure. To preserve my own sanity, I just say, you know what? It's just two sides of the same coin, right? One of my favorite analogies is the coin analogy. You have heads, you have tails, but before the indentations of both the heads and the tails, it was just silver, right? You would flip it, and both sides would be the same. They constitute from the same substance, and that substance is existence. So, does free will exist? Yes, but as much as fate does. Um, it's not, I don't think it's compatible with our human brain to fully grasp those two situations, but I think it's such that you can accept it as is. So, can consciousness exist outside of the brain? I've had out of body experiences, so I can say yes, but at the same time, I think I've only had these out of body experiences because of the, I guess, misfiring of my brain signals. But then again, why would my consciousness sort of clip to a completely different position in space-time, perceive my vessel from a different angle if it just existed in the brain? You know? Um, it's a good question. It's a very good question. Can consciousness exist outside of the brain? I think in the most rudimentary, let me not try to say that word again. I think in the most inherent of senses that everything is consciousness. It's a poor misrepresentation, one I've been trying to avoid for a while, but I think that, like, imagine of an inverted double cone, right? You have the capacity, the correct amount of energy for reality to reflect upon itself, to flip side and be aware, right? That energy is just atoms, electrons, all uh, concentrated in a certain area, right? And that area is obviously the brain. So I don't think it has to do with the fact that it is the brain itself. I just think it has to do with the fact that it's a sufficient amount of energy that is able to reflect upon itself. Um, Only as far as we know on this planet, brains can do that, but who's to say that that is a universal trait across the trillions of stars? So, next question. What is the nature of time? The nature of time is the nature of space, and the nature of space is the nature of time, right? One simply cannot exist without the other. They are corresponding parallels that don't intertwine in a sense, but it's weird. They overlap, but not in the sense that we think. So it's a very tricky uh, thing to wrap our heads around. But I, what is the nature of time? Well, I guess it's just the ability to have space. And what is the nature of space? It's the ability to have time. I don't think there's any other way to explain it. I don't think my human brain could ever truly cap the nature of it or why it's here in the first place, and I won't act as though I could. Why does anything exist at all? Literally what I just said. I don't think our human brains could ever capture something like that, could ever make sense of it in the first place. Um So yeah, that's it for the metaphysical. Now we go into human nature. Let's see. Um, are humans naturally good or selfish? These are both inherent values that I don't think humans can be put in those two boxes. And I don't think they necessarily contradict each other, being good and being selfish. Um, we're social creatures who depend on altruism, depend on cooperation and communication to get as far as we have. These two aspects, being good and being selfish, are inherent. I don't think that they're contradictory. I don't know why this question is acting as though it is. In a lot of cases, being selfish is good. Sometimes being selfless, too selfless, is a bad trait. It's a self-destructive trait. So, yeah. What motivates people more, fear or desire? Fear. We've only gotten as far as we could because our nervous system scared the shit out of us to the extent in which we said, fuck these lions, fuck the diseases, we need to survive, right? Desires are more of a, I guess, a recency sort of thing. Fear has gotten us this far, definitely. You know, fear of death, fear of being dominated, fear of being killed, right? Fear is the most powerful motivator on this planet, you know? A lot of people achieve greatness because they fear being mundane, they fear being mediocre. Desire is sort of the leisure of life, right? When you have all things said and done, and your survival is pretty much certain, then you can have personal desires to the point in which you can just indulge in the seven deadly sins, right? You can indulge in all that this world has to offer. But if it wasn't for fear, the leisure around desires just wouldn't exist in the first place. Why do humans crave meaning? Because without it, there's no stability, right? The human mind thinks it seeks truth, but it doesn't. It doesn't. It seeks stability. And without that stability, there's an uncertainty. An uncertainty that feels like it's an attack on our survival, right? Attack on our self-preservation. And so we create meaning and we create these narratives and we solidify these narratives and we fuse these narratives to our identity. Why? To just soothe ourselves, to comfort ourselves in the hostile, chaotic, and irrational way that the universe functions. We try to bring order, we try to bring justice, we try to bring meaning and value to this existence. It makes us feel good. It makes us feel good the fact that we have something to live for. There's a purpose beyond survival. There's a purpose beyond just trying not to die. Are humans fundamentally irrational? The universe is fundamentally irrational, but I think we humans are the rationality that has been born from the irrational. Um, I think we're the most rational beings on this planet. We are the ones who have the most cognition in comparison to logic, right? And that's sort of the thing. It's like an octopus is extremely intelligent, but it's only intelligent within the confines of its environment. The same with us humans, right? Us humans, we've depended on our communication, we've depended on our ability to interact, and with that, we've built systems of rational. We've built systems of value. We've built systems of righteousness. So, no, humans are not fundamentally irrational. We're the ones who've created the notions of being irrational in the first place. Without the stain of our observation, the universe really just is, you know? Yeah. Why do people repeat destructive patterns? Well, comfort. Comfort is first and foremost. There is nothing better than comfort. There's nothing better than safety, right? To destroy these destructive patterns means to put yourself outside of your pattern recognition. If you can't recognize the patterns, it's scary, it's uncertain, it's uncomfortable. And so, for as long as people crave comfort over progress, we will continue to repeat our destructive patterns. Can people truly change? Yes, we do every single day. To the most minute, miniature amount of change to the biggest ones possible. Regardless if it's environment or if it's trauma or if it's just being enough, having enough of this current reality, yes, humans are able to change, okay? There are things, traits, genetically, hereditary, that can't really be changed or altered, but it's what matters most is the traits of that person, the characteristics of that person, you know? I feel like the only people who don't believe in change is either those who have never changed themselves or those who have never seen change around them. I pity them. Um, are personality traits fixed? Yes and no. There are some that will just carry out with you throughout your life, and there are those who, yes, they could be fixed entirely, you know? Um, it those typically come from alterations of conditions though, right? A deep-seated trauma can make somebody go 180. A good psilocybin mushroom trip could make somebody go 180. It really just depends case to case. Some people will never change, and others will change every year, every decade. What makes someone themselves? Ah, yes, the self. We are a mosaic, is that how you say it? Of everything and everyone that we've ever interacted with. All the conditions, all the constraints, all the thoughts and the emotions. It builds us into what we know as the self. We are who we deem we are. If we deem ourselves weak, we're weak. If we deem ourselves strong, we're strong. There's nobody to say who we are or who we aren't other than ourselves. What is the greatest weakness of human nature? The inability to accept epistemic humility. That is a term I think everybody needs to learn, and that's understanding the limitations of our scope. That's understanding we don't have all the answers. It is a complete infringement on the religious beliefs of today, which unfortunately in my opinion is a toxic fruit to humanity. To deem absolutization, to deem this universe to be human-centric, it's a weakness. And I think that, you know, it's no coincidence that the uprise of technology has weakened religion. People are becoming a lot less religious over time, and it's not a coincidence, you know? Information allows us to understand just how little we know. Okay, meaning, purpose, and existence. Let's see. What gives life meaning? Us. Without it, there is no meaning. It doesn't exist outside of our scope. We are the ones who have created this system in the first place. Can meaning exist without suffering? No. Existence itself can't exist without suffering. Your good days wouldn't be good days without the bad ones. You wouldn't know what it is to be happy without being sad. It's just the way it is. There's a balance, there's a contrast, there's a polarity, and it's meant to be. Oh, people are meant to be aware of it, supposed to be aware of it. Is purpose created or discovered? Created, 100%. There's no discovery of purpose in a universe like this. There is no person or subject to analyze purpose other than the only ones we know of, ourselves. It's a construct. It's definitely not a discovery. You know, the ant doesn't apply meaning to why it serves the colony, it just does. Would immortality ruin life? Absolutely. Death is the greatest thing that has ever happened to us. Death is the reason why we have purpose and meaning and value in the first place. Without it, there's no reason to do anything. There's no reason to chase. There's no reason to love. There's no reason to hate. Everyone is immortal. Nobody dies. Nobody goes anywhere. Inevitably, you will get bored. Inevitably, you will do everything possible. Like, I don't think people understand the scope or the severity beyond mortality. I think realistically, we can only ever imagine the years that we have lived times maybe 4 or 5. We don't understand how long 500 years of life is. We don't understand how long 5,000 years of life is. It's not something that our human brains could wrap around. So, yeah, immortality would definitely ruin life. What makes a good life? A good life is in the eye of the beholder. If I deem my life good, who's to say otherwise? If you deem your life good, who's to say otherwise, right? No one. We are the ones who apply this meaning in the first place. We are the ones who allow ourselves to judge our own existence. No one else. Do humans need meaning to survive psychologically? For as long as human history has been, yeah, unfortunately, I think that's the case. I say unfortunately because this meaning has been warped over time. It has been so warped, in fact, that we kill each other over this meaning. We kill each other over our own beliefs. Like, it's such an insane notion that we're willing to take away the lives of others because they threaten our position and our belief psychologically, metaphysically. It just, you know, there's no real rhyme or reason why we do. We just do it out of fear. We do it out of uncertainty. Um, what matters most at the end of life? Once again, in the eye of the beholder. For some, it could be money. Others, it could be fame. It could be happiness. It could be love. Matter itself, meaning itself, doesn't objectively exist, you know? So there's no final answer to such a thing, and never will be. Is happiness overrated? No, but the chase of happiness is, most definitely. We think happiness to be the end all be all, when we should see it as one of the many complex emotions that we humans hold. It's like a pendulum that swings. With the conditions and the environments and the reception of our thoughts, we don't choose, but we just land in certain areas. Happiness, rage, sorrow, dread, apathy. The moment that we try to force our emotions to be something else, that's the moment where we could get stuck, where we could become numb, where we could avoid the natural flow of how we feel things. So, in a sense, yeah, the chase of happiness is definitely overrated, but the feeling itself, obviously not. Everybody loves to be happy, no matter if it's just down to chemicals in the brain or something much greater. It's there, and we all love it. What is worth suffering for? Everything. Life. Love. Once again, it truly is in the eye of the beholder. Um, So yeah, does life need meaning to be valuable? No. I don't believe in inherent meaning, yet I think life is the most valuable thing ever. I know the odds of my existence. I know that I don't know what happens after death, but I know what's happening now. I know that I'm alive. I know that I'm here. So I'm going to make the most of it. Because why not? I don't need meaning. I don't need the pursuit of something greater. If I could just appreciate and accept this phenomenon as it is. So, is morality objective or invented? It's invented. Like I've said before, there is no placeholder in this universe for human concepts outside of our human observation. It is entirely a human construct and will forever be so. Can evil exist without intention? No. The lion rips open the gazelle, devours it, right? The lion kills the cubs of other lions to ensure its genetics run through properly. To the human eyes, you can stain it with whatever observation you want, but there is no such thing as being evil in the animal kingdom. Unless you're probably dolphins slapping around pufferfish to get high because they're just, I think they have the capacity to understand that this is leisure, this is fun, right? They're doing it not out of maliciousness, but just out of enjoyment. I don't think they understand the grasp that what they're doing is inherently wrong. They like their pleasure over the pufferfish's life, right? So it's not inherently evil. There's no evil sense. Evil is, once again, a human construct. Do ends justify means? If the means come back to bite you in the ass, then no, it doesn't. But in a lot of cases, it does. Um, I think some things some things take a great amount of sacrifice and a great amount of effort to be done. And what I've learned is results are, I think, the most important thing. You can talk the talk, but as if you don't walk the walk, it's useless. There's nothing there, right? So yeah, in a sense, ends justify the means, but not 100% on 100%. Once again, it's a case by case thing. It's completely subjective. What is justice? Justice is a construct. Justice can be justified across many different cases and many different accounts. Some people say that killing your rapist isn't justice. Some people say killing your rapist is justice. There is no absolute placeholder for it. We as a society have accumulated the minds together and created laws. Laws that could be bent, could be flexible, but regardless of such, it's the fact that everybody has the right to court, everybody has this and that. Not everybody agrees with it, you know? There's no universal sense of justice. Once again, human construct. And morality exists without religion? Absolutely. If anything, morality itself, a secular morality, is much better than a religious morality. If you're able to justify your God slaughtering a bunch of people because of, I don't know, being overzealous or jealous or envious or just hateful, it's not really the best moral guidance, moral compass. Is forgiveness always good? No. In most cases, yes, but some people just don't learn. Your ability to forgive won't change the lines of causality that person might perpetuate. You could forgive a killer. doesn't mean that killer is going to stop killing. What do humans owe each other? Inherently, absolutely nothing. And I think that's one of the hardest pills to swallow. We don't owe each other anything. We don't owe each other respect. We don't owe each other nothing, nothing, nothing. It's a courtesy, yeah. If you're conscious about it, it's good to, have this lines of principles to give one another, but there's nothing that we owe each other at all. You know, I have a principle that if you bring a vessel into this world, you are indebted to it. But intrinsically speaking, you're not. You know, my morality won't override the fact that there are those out there who abandon their kids, who do nothing about them, right? So it's a real thing versus theoretical and practice. Should truth always be told? It's not that the truth should always be told, it's that it typically always comes to the surface. Inevitably. Not always, but typically. For that, in most cases, but I don't think, yeah, the word always is I think everything could be justified in a certain context. I think it's very hard to ever absolutize such a broad uh term like truth. Can a bad person become good? Like I said with change, it's a person to person case, you know? Some could, some can't. Is suffering morally necessary? It's not morally necessary, it's intrinsically necessary. Without suffering, there is nothing to live for, you know? If everything is all happiness, sunshines, and rainbows, it stops being actual happiness, sunshines, and rainbows. You know what I'm saying? It just becomes something. Where was I? Next question. Can humans ever know truth? No, only ever slither, unfortunately. We have the necessary tools to understand that there is a vast amount of things we can never understand or never wrap our heads around with our stimuli, with our senses. So, no, we can never know truth. Absolutely. Just partially. What makes knowledge reliable? I think the scientific principle, the method is pretty concrete, you know? You take it amongst many different people, many different peers, and if the same result come back time and time and time again, you know that's reliable. Metaphysically speaking, nothing much, man. I can't even lie. It's quite hard to say that my belief in God is reliable or not. It truly is intrinsically subjective. Does certainty help us or harm us? Both. Certainty in what? This is a very broad question. Are contradictions avoidable? It's case by case. You know, I'm a firm believer in subjectivity of this existence. Um, I don't think that all contradictions are bad. This is what I guess the question is trying to claim, but unavoidable, it happens. It happens. I think contradictions only exist because of our human observation of them, you know? Um, for a coin to both land on heads and tails, we need to understand the constructs behind the heads and tails themselves. And to understand that those contradictions just can't truly exist in the confines of our reality. But we deprive ourselves of these constructs, and there's no notions to make contradictions about in the first place. Can science explain everything? No. At least not now. There's a bunch of things that remain unexplained. And one of the things that I really do respect from most scientists is they never claim to know everything. They only know as far as science has upheld their knowledge to be, right? They don't claim things that they certainly have no proof or evidence for. But, but, not everything has the ability to be uh, recurrent. Not everything has the ability to be produced in such a way that will yield evidence. So, no, science is definitely not the end all be all. What are the limits of human understanding? Is the limits of our stimuli and the limits of the instruments that lie beyond the stimuli. Because once again, those instruments can only ever yield information that our stimuli allows us to. You get it? Does language limit thought? No, language has created thought. But language and thought aren't the end-all be-all. There is no absolutization, and there is definitely things that are beyond thoughts and language as concepts themselves. What belief would be hardest to abandon? The belief in meaning. The belief that we are here to do something. No matter what it is, to serve God, to experience this life, to create meaning, there is no actual objective service as to why we're here. There's no rhyme or there's no reason, right? There is, it's, yeah, well, like I said again, epistemic humility, right? You need to have it. Or else, time and time again, you will come to a crossroad in which you'll suffer because of cognitive dissonance, right? You don't want to accept the fact that you don't know what the fuck you're doing here. Neither do I. Neither does anybody else. What is more dangerous, ignorance or certainty? Definitely ignorance, you know? I think certainty is just something you can accept, but ignorance within itself is a danger, especially in this modern world. So much amount of misinformation and covering of good information. Being ignorant to the current state of the world or the current state of reality can bring a crazy amount of suffering for you and everybody around you. Can humans handle complete truth? We don't have the ability to understand complete truth. We never will. Is this the last one? No. Oh my god, there's a lot more. Okay. I'm probably going to be answering these questions each stream for a while, I guess. Can love exist without attachment? I believe in unconditional love. But to love is to be attached, you know? You can't love somebody and be numb at the same time. You can't love somebody and lose them and not feel grief. It's a completely normal thing to feel, right? Damn, my computer's hot. Okay, I think I'll have like 10 minutes left. But yeah, no, love is inherent to attachment. Connection itself is attachment. And I don't know why like the Buddhists say that attachment is bad, that suffering is bad, and that we must release ourselves from suffering. I'm more so on the side of embracing the suffering, embracing the attachment, right? Our nervous system craves connection. And to deprive ourselves of that is almost foolish in a sense. Why do humans fear loneliness? Like I said, we have a central nervous system that craves connection, craves attachment. Being lonely is an infringement upon how we evolved as a species, which is together as a community. To belong is to be human. And without it, we we don't become less human. It's just there's an aspect that should be there on a physiological level. What destroys the relationships most? The inability to communicate, the inability to be vulnerable. That is the relationship killer, you know? Trust comes from honesty. Trust comes from the ability to be vulnerable with your partner and communicate thoroughly your wants, your needs, what needs to change, what needs to stay, and your inability to talk about that ruins it. Can someone love and still leave? Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. It's funny, I just watched Twilight recently. That word just popped in my mind. It's funny. Um, yeah, absolutely. People can leave because of love, you know? Maybe that person is just too dangerous to be around. Maybe they are not where they want to be in life and they understand the limitations of what they're able to give for you as their partner. It's a it's a hard choice to make, but certainly people could. Um, why do people hurt the people they love? You could do it ignorantly, you could do it consciously, but most of the time it just comes down to, I guess, not being able to be truthful, be vulnerable, be honest. Well, truthful, honest, same thing. Um, yeah, I think most of it comes from dishonesty, you know? Lack of communication is really what hurts people the most. What makes a friendship meaningful? Whatever you apply meaning to that friendship. If it's quality time, if it's doing activities together, if it's gift giving, if it's traveling the world, if it's being vulnerable, if it's laughing, you know, it's one of those things that are really just case by case. There's no objective friendship meaning, but I guess just somebody who makes you feel good, you know? I definitely wouldn't want to be friends with somebody who doesn't make me feel good or wanted, right? Is emotional pain necessary for growth? Yes, absolutely. Um, I take the analogy of being an alchemist, right? Instead of being a physical alchemist, you are a mental alchemist who transmutes your pain into progress. That pain becomes passion, and that passion becomes progress to whatever you put your mind to. But most certainly, emotional pain is a necessity for psychological growth. Can people truly understand one another? I'll always say that there is a infinite amount of gap. There's an infinitely large gap between one and another. Like the jewels in Indra's web, they all reflect each other, but they will never be one another. They will always be individual, and they will always be infinitely far as they are infinitely close. So no, they will never truly understand each other, only partially. Why do humans seek connection? Physiologically, once again, it's the nervous system. It's what has allowed us to be who we are, right? The warmth of another rudim- is intrinsically what has allowed our survival to be so consistent, you know? Without that warmth from one another, all else really just falls apart, you know? Humans need connection. We need to reach out to one another and communicate with one another and love one another because that's who we are.